the Catholic Men's Podcast, helping you find good works of literature for the Catholic gentleman. The Legend of Beddgelert. Ever since my friend, Mr. Evan Owell, sent me this story, I haven't been able to get it out of my head. Even though it's short, it's sort of haunting, and I'll never forget its lesson. It was a video from the criminally underrated YouTube channel, Jake Evans Storyteller. It's amazing to me that he doesn't have more subscribers because he does such an incredible job. He tells the story about a statue of a dog in Gwynedd, Wales. I'll link the YouTube video in the description so you can show him your support. He actually filmed on location, and it was incredibly beautiful. So here is the Legend of Beddgelert. It's just past 10 years since I started working as a storyteller, and when I started off, I only really had one story. Since then, I've learned a few more, but that first story is still one of my favorites. So I've come to the place where the original version of that story is supposed to have happened, so I can share it with you all on location. Hundreds of years ago, in this part of North Wales, there lived a prince called Llewellyn. He loved to go hunting, and every time he went out into the forest to hunt, he would go with his hound, Gelert. You couldn't ask for a more faithful hound than Gelert, and Llewellyn loved him so much that he even let him sleep at the bottom of his bed, even though he was a shaggy, smelly, hairy beast. After years and years of trying, Llewellyn and his wife finally had a baby boy. And on that day that the baby was born, I'm afraid to say that Gelert was demoted to the stables. Llewellyn didn't really think he should trust a wolfhound with a baby, even Gelert. Now, one day, several months after the baby had been born, Llewellyn decided to go hunting. He went down to the stables, he got his horse, and he called out for Gelert, and he expected the slobbery dog to come bounding up to him like he always did. But Gelert was nowhere to be seen, so Llewellyn went off into the forest on his own. It was a soggy, soggy day, which I suppose isn't surprising for this part of the world. But it didn't take Llewellyn long to find, in a clearing, a magnificent stag, and the chase was on. They ran for miles and miles until they got to a raging river full of flood water, and the stag with its long legs managed an extraordinary leap all the way to the far bank. Llewellyn's horse refused to follow him, and so the hunt was over. It took Llewellyn hours to get home, but when he finally got there, he was greeted by Gelert, who came bounding right up to him, slobbering everywhere, putting his paws up onto his shoulders. So Llewellyn pushed him down and said, "Where have you been, boy?" And that was when he realized that Gelert's mouth was stained red with blood. And a terrible thought crossed his mind. He rushed indoors, went up to the nursery, and the scene that met him there was one of absolute carnage. The cot was turned onto its side, and the baby's blankets were covered in blood. So Llewellyn got out his sword and grabbed Gelert by the scruff of his neck, and he said, "You monster, you've killed my son!" And he took that sword and plunged it deep into Gelert's heart. And with little more than a whimper, Gelert sank to the ground and breathed his last. But just a few moments after that, the silence of the nursery was broken by another soft whimper, over by the cot. So Llewellyn dropped the sword, went over to the blankets and lifted them up, and there he found his baby boy without a single scratch on him. And beyond that, there was the torn, dead body of a huge wolf. Gelert had sensed this wolf in the morning, and that's why he had stayed behind, to guard the nursery, protect the baby, and kill the wolf on his own. And Gelert was buried in a spot just outside the village, which was named in his honor, Beddgelert. the grave of Gellert. There stands his statue over the grave, a reminder that if you act in anger, you might make a terrible mistake. So now I think I'm going to go into Beddgelert, find a pub, dry off a little bit, and have a pint in honor of Gellert, the faithful hound. Why does the dog have to die every time? Like Old Yeller, like every single story about a dog, they have to die. Why? I'm going to write a story where the dog doesn't die. All right? This is crazy. Actually, wait a minute. Don't go away. I have an idea. As long as we're here and we're already reading about dog legends, why don't I tell you about Greyfriars Bobby, the Scottish legend? I found a good version of the story by Ben Jonson, so I'll just read it here for your convenience. Greyfriars Bobby. In 1850, a gardener called John Grey, together with his wife Jess and son John, arrived in Edinburgh, Scotland. Unable to find work as a gardener, he avoided the workhouse by joining the Edinburgh police force as a night watchman. To keep him company through the long winter nights, John took on a partner, a diminutive Skye Terrier, his watchdog, called Bobby. Together, John and Bobby became a familiar sight trudging through the old cobbled streets of Edinburgh. Through thick and thin, winter and summer, they were faithful friends. The years on the streets appear to have taken their toll on John, as he was treated by the police surgeon for tuberculosis. John sadly died of the disease on the 15th of February, 1858, and was buried in Greyfriars Kirkyard. Yes, it really does say kirkyard, and I've never heard of that before. Obviously, it means churchyard. Bobby soon touched the hearts of the local residents when he refused to leave his master's grave, even in the worst of weather conditions. The gardener and keeper of Greyfriars tried on many occasions to evict Bobby from the kirkyard. In the end, he gave up and provided a shelter for Bobby by placing sacking beneath 2 tablstones at the side of John Grey's grave. Bobby's fame spread throughout Edinburgh. It's reported that almost on a daily basis, crowds would gather at the entrance of the kirkyard, waiting for the 1 o'clock gun that would signal the appearance of Bobby leaving the grave for his midday meal. Bobby would follow William Dow, a local joiner and cabinet maker, to the same coffee house that he had frequented with his now dead master, where he was given a meal. In 1867, a new bylaw was passed that required all dogs to be licensed in the city, or they would be destroyed. Sir William Chambers, the Lord Provost of Edinburgh, decided to pay Bobby's license and presented him with a collar with a brass inscription, Greyfriars Bobby, from the Lord Provost, 1867, licensed. This can be seen at the Museum of Edinburgh. The kind folk of that city took good care of Bobby, but still he remained loyal to his master. For 14 years, the dead man's faithful dog kept constant watch and guard over the grave until his own death in 1872. Let his loyalty and devotion be a lesson to us all. Thank you for listening, and Godspeed.